Ah yes, the pew pews in space, my favorite activity that I used to do non-stop when I first got the game. Well then, for a guide, I'll trust you to sort of figure out the little details for yourselves as to what ship you want or what color you want and whatnot else. Otherwise, this would turn into an hours long discussion. No, what you probably want to know is what's the best ship, what's the best weapon, and so on. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's just start from the ground up. Let's say you just started out, perhaps in that weekend when Elite was free on Epic Store or whatnot. So now you're in a Sidewinder and you want to go and already bully the big boys. And I gotta tell ya, please don't. Clearly no one ever does well with the starter gear. However, you can do some cheeky things. So here's a tip number 1 for you. Don't do any combat missions. They don't really pay that well, plus you need kind of an ass-pounder tractor to accomplish anything, while you are sitting here in a Fiat Multipla. You just look silly. No, instead I recommend going for my favorite combat spot, that is the resource extraction sites. These places reside always in planetary rings, and to find them is really not that hard. In fact, I would recommend you to take a look at the system called LHS-20. This system has starports super close to the res sites, and multiple types at that. So you don't need to go far to fix or hand in your bounties. On top, the system offers a wide selection of ships and items for upgrades. And if that's not enough, all that is with a price discount due to some wibbly-wobbly settings that you probably don't care about. So once you feel ready to go out of the starter systems, just pick up a fuel scoop and head there. Unless of course you have found your own place. In any case, once you've found your temporary or perhaps a permanent home base, set up your ship for fighting and off you go to the res site. And here's a trick. As long as you touch a wanted criminal scum near the moment of death, but you don't deal the killing blow, as long as the enemy is killed by an NPC, you should get the bounty. So, what a cheeky fucker like you would do is see if the system cops are attacking anyone, and then just attack them near their point of death, and then just simply collect the reward. This way is actually quite nice to accumulate some starter cash quickly, to buy ships or upgrades and whatnot. Later, once you've got stronger shields and other parts, you can try and solo kill the Space Karens, but for now, just enjoy the free credits. Well, so to speak. Now, I made some videos on what are the best or the cheapest combat ships that I would recommend, and I'll link some of them down below, but for now, really, you can do combat in anything, even if it is by using yourself as a pseudo-meat missile of ultimate judgment or something. However, for pure combat, I'd say Viper 3 is cheaper than Cobra 3, but both are fine choices for an upgrade. Later down the line, Vulture is a great choice and one of my personal favorites. But let's say you got even more cash. Well, Chieftain certainly is a logical progression, and later, ultimately, the mighty Fer-de-Lance. There's really no better than that. Except if you're doing PvE only, then I suppose one of the large ships would be the best ones. As for the ship build guidelines, well, remember that ammo in Elite is finite and you will have to go and resupply at the starport. So, if you plan on staying in res site for long, well, it's best to pick a weapon that does not need ammo. Those would be the laser weapons. However, you must know that there are issues with such weapons. Clearly, there has to be a downside to no ammo requirements. And that mainly comes in the form of a heat generated per shot, as well as the rather massive power distributor draw. But trust me, it's far better than running dry after the 4th kill. As for defenses, well, it's generally recommended to getting as thick of a ship condom as possible. And much like with anger fucking, staying safe is still the priority, and considering that the space condoms in Elite regenerate, it's always best to prioritize that. But don't forget the hull underneath either, in case, you know, the worst should happen. Oh, and a fun fact, as long as you have shields, you can dock whatever way you want. Now, as for the upgrades, I would always prioritize the power distributor, then the weapons, and finally shields and armor. Oh, okay, finally, the thrusters too. Of course, as always, going far with one part might not be the smartest one, as you may lack the cash to upgrade other things. I mean, you may have the biggest PP, but if you don't have enough juice to fire it even once, well, what's the point? As for other types of combats, well, generally speaking, I gotta be honest, the combat in Elite is, first of all, unbalanced and it really doesn't pay that well. However, if you still want to do it, go for it. And speaking of that, interdiction of ships and pulling them out of supercruise. Sure, you may see a wanted criminal floating in space and you want to pull him out and, you know, make money that way. But trust me, it's far slower and more blinding, as you can see, doing it for the umpteenth time. So rather relegate that for the PvP. And missions basically the same thing, they're extremely hit and miss, while being very low paying. And the combat zones, well, they probably, with missions, would be well paying. However, you need very well built ship, plus it being engineered to be of any use. But all that said, I still personally love the Asteroid Ring bounty hunting. It's pretty scenery and fun explosions and rather fast but not great cash. And you know, for now, it will do. Oh, but once you're done with that, if you want a challenge, well, maybe Targoid boss battles would be really fun. It's, frankly speaking, one of the most challenging things in Elite Dangerous. Though yet again, it requires engineering. And speaking of engineering, yeah, that kind of deserves its own guide, as there's really not much information in the game, so, oh boy, well, as a beginner, you shouldn't stress about too much about it. Just enjoy the game rather instead, okay? And I bet the comments already are flowing full of tryhards trying to remind me about the pips. So, on the bottom right corner of your ship, you can see the little doohickeys. In the screen, you can see that image, right? So, you can change those, well, if you're using keyboard and mouse like I do, with arrow keys. Or for Hotas, you just need to set it up yourself. Basically, what this does is change the power regeneration from power distributor to different aspects of your ship. Be that for weapon firing, boosting, or shield regeneration. There are extra things like the more pips to shields, the stronger the shields overall, the more pips to engines, the faster your ship turns, but for weapons, it's just regeneration, that's all. Generally speaking, that's a very important thing that will have to be learned eventually. However, for now, well, try and play around with it and see how it changes your ship's aspects. But as for my final thought, I know you're gonna die if you try this, a lot, even I do these days. Still, going in open play and trying your luck in PvP, at the very least, is something you should try a few times. In fact, not all asshole gankers are, well, smelly anuses. Some are willing to help you out, so asking around will not hurt. Just don't do it in the official forums. That toxic cesspool of misery is governed by unfit characters. And in any case, that's about it for this guide for now. As said, there are far more things to learn about Elite and how the mechanics work and so on and so forth, but for that I point you to my other videos. However, in the meantime, if you want to support the work I do here, check out my Patreon or become the YouTube member and whatnot else. But as for me, well, you know, I'm kind of feeling nostalgic about the Asteroid Ring, so I probably will go and play with those.